The countries who do the best in international comparisons, whether it's Finland or Japan, Denmark or Singapore, do well because they have professional teachers who are respected, and they also have family and community which support learning. People are going to make comparisons and they can do that, but I'm definitely not going to compare myself to Derek Jeter. YouTube clips get millions, billions of hits. Reality TV programs have their own channels. How can movies attempt to compete with these kinds of numbers? And do we even need to? Are we scaring ourselves by unnecessary comparisons, by not comparing apples with apples? But it really wasn't until 3 to 4 years later, when we had an opportunity in the lab to make very detailed observations and comparisons with other fossil discoveries, that we realized she was a new species of human ancestor. Never, never, will I accept, on issues of integrity, comparisons with the Liberal Party. People will always make comparisons. Acting is all I've ever done, and I've nothing else to make comparisons with. When anyone asks me whether I've ever wanted anything else out of life, it's given me enough satisfaction so that I haven't wanted or had to look for anything else. When you get into comparisons in any way of, we want it to be like this or, we don't want it to be like this, it takes away from the authenticity of what you're trying to say and what you're trying to make. Comparisons are really no good in sport, especially if it is a comparison between different eras and generations, for there are so many variables that come into play, starting from the quality of the opposition to playing conditions. I feel really blessed when people start comparing me with Sachin, but I keep myself focused on my performance and not on such comparisons. I literally worship him, so I don't see too much in this comparison. No cricketer has been able to score 100 centuries like Sachin. Boys can just wear a suit on the red carpet and that's fine, but for girls it's all about the way you look, and there are constant comparisons. Whenever a dope artist comes out of nowhere, the first thing you do is try and compare it to stuff until you realize that that artist is just them, and eventually those comparisons will stop. I am trying to do my own thing, but there will always be comparisons, even if I don't agree with them. There's absolutely no comparisons to me or anyone else to Willie Mays. Willie Mays, he's the greatest baseball player of all time. Psycho is probably the best known example of a horror film whose exclusive sound was strings, and since then, it's been hard to avoid that. The minute you have strings as your primary voice, the comparisons are always made. I've seen comparisons between myself and Bobby Moore. It's nice to be told there are similarities, but nobody will come close to him. What a player, what a man. You're always going to get comparisons. Everybody comes out and says, he's the next so-and-so, or, he reminds me of so-and-so. I have so many influences and stuff in my brain, who knows what's going to pop in and come out. I'm Austin Safarian Jenkins. He's Tony Gonzalez. He's the best tight end to ever play the game, so that's a real strong comparison. I'm just going to do my job and leave the comparisons up to the coaches and the media. We were in the same band, but we're two completely different people. People have asked me to make comparisons with our albums, and I can't, because there's no comparison. Her album's okay. I don't think she's the best singer on earth, but she's okay. I think most couples drift apart because of comparisons. Unfortunately, in our society a perfect match is when the man is more successful than the woman. Everyone tries to compare cooks to rock stars. I see more comparisons to the fashion world. The mind of a human being is formed only of comparisons made in order to examine analogies, and therefore cannot precede the existence of memory. Anyone who was tempted to draw comparisons between my father's Dave Robichaux series and my first book quickly gave up. Judgment traps you within the limitations of your comparisons. It inhibits freedom. But yeah, a lot of people compare me to Magic. The physical appearance, the tall point guard, the ability to pass the ball. But comparisons are one thing, it's up to me to go out and play my game, get those wins, those championships. That's the only way those comparisons can get closer, but he's a legend. I think comparisons are very on the surface. If I sing, like, Park Bench People, and there's kind of a social undertone, people will say I sound like Gil Scott-Heron. But for me, the more insightful comparison would be a Roberta Flack or Nina Simone, people who really mix different genres of music. I think that's created a healthy environment. The comparisons to BR were maddening, and there was this assumption that the two of us were looking at each other with rage and resentment, which was also not the case. The whole grunge girl comparisons certainly are the easiest to pick out, and I appreciate that music journalists are rushed. I worked at NBC and MTV for 2 years, and it was very interesting to see the comparisons of audiences and the way that I would have to present a story to the two different places. I think people need comparisons to grade a singer, so if they are comparing me to the biggest singer of India, I am sure I am on the right path. I have never believed in comparisons, whether they are about different eras, players or coaches. Awards for arts, where you make comparisons, don't make much sense. Things hurt me just as much as anyone else. My insecurities, failures. I'm vulnerable to comparisons. How would you compare Polanski or Kubrick? I try not to do any comparisons. I love Kelly Clarkson's Message, and I've heard comparisons to Pink. Once people start making comparisons to a player of the past, they want you to be that player. I try to go out there and create my own image, my own style, my own type of game. Right now I can't even think of one guy I've been compared to. It's funny, people often compare me to other humor essayists. They're usually quite nice comparisons, I will accept those gladly, but I am always sort of appalled at the idea of being lumped with other, more chick-y female writers. And the truth is probably that neither comparison is accurate. Yes, I've heard of the Mad Men comparisons, but I like to think The Hour has its own distinctive voice. Although it is set in 1956, I have tried to give it a contemporary edge, and its themes of love, passion, romance, fury, professional jealousy, and personal failure are universal, I think. Maryland's different than Virginia. Maryland has certain advantages that Virginia doesn't have and certain disadvantages. We should just worry about ourselves and not worry about comparisons. Everywhere you look for comparisons of life under anarchy and life under government is less violent. People should know that I am Dybala, and I want to continue to be so. I understand the comparisons and expectations on me from the Argentines, but I don't want to be the new Messi or the Messi of the future. All comparisons between America's current place in the world and anything legitimately called an empire in the past reveal ignorance and confusion about any reasonable meaning of the concept empire, especially the comparison with the Roman Empire. I try not to pay attention to talk of comparisons. I only want to focus on myself. It is good to hear that people are talking like that, but the truth is I am not at Cruyff's level of talent, and I never will be, so it is not something I think about. When I heard that Roots was being remade, my first response was, seriously? I was a bit skeptical. Then I had an audition in early 2015. I didn't know how to feel about it. I was a little scared of the responsibility of telling the story again with the weight of the first one behind me. I was scared of comparisons. Because of recent improvements in the accuracy of theoretical predictions based on large-scale ab initio quantum mechanical calculations, meaningful comparisons between theoretical and experimental findings have become possible. I liked Pat Cash, and I loved Mats Wilander. I went to the Australian Open with my parents, and I used to watch Wilander being cheered on by the Swedish fans, and with his game style being like mine, I drew comparisons with him. Picabia is a very old painter who some people try to connect me to, but I refuse such comparisons very well. Men have been obliged to make for themselves a notion of what religion is, long before the science of religions started its methodical comparisons. Some Terminator fans are outraged that I'm playing Sarah Connor. They think I'm not muscly enough. To be honest, I'm a little tired of the comparisons to Linda Hamilton. I know she will always be the original Sarah Connor, but when people see what I bring to the role, they will look at her with new eyes. But sequence comparison simply can't account for the development of complex biochemical systems any more than Darwin's comparison of simple and complex eyes told him how vision worked. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.